on your company. You want to make sure that your secretary or anyone that you have under you doesn't bother you during that 15 or 20 minutes that you're going to interview someone, because you really want to take all that time and knowledge and bring it to him or her. Keep calm and don't talk too much. Just as like a key note, for every one word that you say, the interviewee should say about 10 to 15 words. So that would really bring up the conversation more towards them and less towards you. You don't want to talk the whole time and not have them talk enough. Therapy, if your whole interview is like a therapy session, it's really not going to be beneficial for you or the interviewee. You really want to make it towards like a talking sense. You want to make it not personable, but you don't want to make it, so tell me about this, tell me about that. You want to make it a little flowy. Requirements. There's a lot of requirements that the job should be, but it's also the requirements of what the employee wants to do. If you tell him the requirements are to take out trash after the shift and he doesn't want to take out trash, well, you're screwed basically, because he's not going to do that and you're going to have to find another employee. Gossip. Gossiping in the workplace shouldn't really take place, but you definitely shouldn't say, well, if you come to work for us, you may know that the lady who sits right there, she really likes to talk a lot. She really wants to, like, I guess, be friendly with you. You really should leave all the personal stuff of the office work out of the interviewer. If you end up like this after the interview, something really bad happened, because you really shouldn't be that exhausted after the interview. If it really feels like you went 12 rounds with someone, I would recommend not working for that organization, because it's just going to be really high tense for you. Short term and long term. If you're hiring for short term, that's good, but just remember that short term always affects the long term. So if you hire someone for 90 days, but after that 90 days, he can have on day 45, he can have a negative impact on your organization that could really potentially harm you in the long run. No cell phones. Cell phones during the interview, they shouldn't happen. You shouldn't check your time on your cell phone. You should always have a watch. Don't check your watch too often either. Checking the watch too often would lead to the interviewee thinking you're dissatisfied with him, and then the whole interview is basically going to go to hell. Asking good and bad questions. Asking good and bad questions is really, really important for the interviewer. Also asking questions that you're going to write down. Don't ask questions, tell me 3 negative things about yourself and then write them down. That'll really look bad on your part. You're really going to sadden basically the interviewee. Looking at the resume. If someone hands you a resume, you should always take it. That 1 second of you taking that paper is going to mean the interview could go good or could go bad. It all depends on you taking that paper. Also, it could be updated with any new information. Getting distracted during the interview, I already went over that, but really, if you're distracted and you really can't focus on the interviewee, no cell phones, and really everything that the interviewee would say would basically be lost, because you would be paying attention to something else. The next step, always tell them the next step in the process. Even if it goes bad, you're going to say, well, you can have another interview possibly in 3 to 4 weeks if everything works out, but always let them know what's going to happen next, or you're just going to have them calling your organization 5 times during the day. My experience is with the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office. I'm an intern there right now. My interview went really good. They really want to sweat you out with everything you do. They want to know basically everything. They dug into stuff from like 2010 on my Facebook, and they said, oh, you should delete that. And I was like, okay, no problem. I didn't even know that was on there, but I deleted it. Masonry, I worked as a mason. Really, the interview process, there really wasn't any. They basically said, can you do the job or can you not do the job? I worked there for 3.5 years, and it's really a different whole aspect of interviewing. Hardest interview I ever went on was a police panel interview. They literally sweat you out. They ask you every question under the sun. They hunt you down. They know everything about you before you step into that room. So anything you hide, they want to know basically everything about you and everything you've done in your life. and a handshake. The handshake is literally the most important thing at the end. If you get out and you don't give someone a handshake, they can remember that. Also, shaking their hand too hard, you don't want to do that either. You want to give a nice, good, clean handshake, and they will remember you for that. Now, next is Kayla, and she will be talking to you about questions to ask.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk about specific questions that you should ask when you're interviewing somebody, and specific questions that you shouldn't ask, because just like the first group who went before, you're probably going to get you in a lot of trouble, and you really don't. You can find other ways to really ask the same question. So an about yourself question, that's just a question for the, you can like find out about the interviewee. So a question that you might ask is, tell me something about yourself that's not on your resume. I've had that question before, and it's a good one. So it's just something that like they could find out, you could find out with the interviewee that you might not know, might not be on the resume, but extra information that can help you. Another question is, tell me about your greatest achievement at work. This could help you find a lot of information. It tells you what they consider a greatest achievement. So like a possible answer they could say is, I help decrease turnover or something. Describe the work environment in which you will most effectively be able to contribute. So you want to make sure that the person you're interviewing, they're very equal in what they want in your work environment. So you don't want somebody who's very antisocial, who wants to be alone, working in a group. It won't be very good, even though they're very good at their job, it still won't be a good match. Tell me a time when you had to overcome a major obstacle that stood in your way from accomplishing a goal. This kind of tells you like 3 major things. It tells you, and that tells you what they consider an obstacle, tells you about interactions with their coworkers, and it tells you what they consider accomplishing a goal. What prompted you to apply for this job? So when you're interviewing somebody, this question kind of tells you their motivation. Maybe they're applying for this job because it's a bigger company. Maybe they want more money. Maybe they just they don't like their company that they worked for before. So you can find out why they're leaving, which leads you into why you're leaving your current position. This is a good question to ask because you don't want someone who's leaving their current position because they decide to yell at their boss or because they decide to flip their desk over. You really want more positive reasons, like they want to work for a bigger company, or they want more responsibility, or they want to be a bigger part of the company. So attributes, a question that someone might ask, you might ask somebody, is like, what skills or attributes you have that would help you with this job. So some of them would be, you're very motivated, you're honest, you're very responsible. How would your boss describe you? So this one's a good question to ask because you could find out how they perceive their boss and how they think that their boss perceives them. So I mean, you could easily find out if they're telling the truth when they answer the question. You could call their boss, make sure. But I mean, if their boss doesn't like them, then that's not a good sign. So now I'm going to go over questions not to ask. And I know the group before us went over this, but I'm going to go a little more specific, because this is actually really important and this can get you in a lot of trouble. So you never want to ask these questions. So I'm just going to go over it quick again. Have you ever been arrested? That's a no-no to ask. You can ask, have you ever been convicted of a crime? But you can never ask, have you been arrested? Because arrested, they could be found not guilty, or the charges could be dropped. If you ask, have you ever been arrested, that means that they were convicted of a crime, which is a lot more serious. Are you married? So you never want to ask, are you married, because this can also be construed as sexual harassment if they think that you're trying to make advancements to them. It also could be, they could be like, the interviewee could be thinking you're thinking about future plans, like children, or future children. So children, you can't ask if they have children. This is still a no-no. I mean, it has nothing to do with the job, so you shouldn't ask it. Even if you really don't want to hire someone with children, you still can't ask it. So just stay away from all these personal questions, because it can only get you in a lot of trouble. What is your child care situation? So you can never ask what their child care situation is, but you can ask, can they work overtime? Can they travel? And then you can ask, are you able to work at this time to this time? So you can kind of figure out if their child care situation involves the parent. How far is your commute? I didn't know that one, but apparently you can't ask that one. And the reason is if someone who you're interviewing who lives farther away might think that they didn't get the job because they live farther away and you might have hired someone closer. So you can't say how far it's going to be. You can ask, can you make it before 8 a.m. or can you make it before 9 a.m. So you can give a specific time. And from my experience, I work at a Quick Check. So just kind of a bad experience. I mean, I work there, but like someone else came in to the interview and their appearance was really bad. Like they came in like they're doing yard work. So obviously my boss gave them the interview, but he didn't even consider them because Quick Check is not a high job, but it's still, you still need to dress like it. I work at Rowan, and that was a good interview process. It was really relaxing. It was it was tough questions, but it was really easy to answer as long as you told the truth. And I ended up getting that job, so that was a good experience I had. Third one is Homebridge Financial Service. My mom works there. She's a manager there. So she has a lot of experience with interviewing people. So she gives me a lot of advice of what to do, what not to do. And then she's also been interviewed a lot of times. So she's always a good resource to use. And then our midterm that we did, that was a huge experience, helpful, because you got to record yourself and figure out what you could improve on and then what you did good on. And then you did the second interview, which you could find out if you improved in like any aspects, and then if you still needed help with stuff, so you can work on it and make sure that you can interview someone properly. And then just to recap, we went over the interview process, and we went over how to appearance and how to kind of act and do your pre-interview. We went over different types of interviews, which is like one-on-ones, group interviews, panel interviews. Alex went over what not to do, so like what not to do, and then I went over specific questions to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, bro.
Thank you. Were there any specific things that you learned while preparing or delivering your presentation that you would like to share with us? No?
Just practice. The timing is everything.
Yeah, the timing is important because if you miss the timing, you get a little bit nervous. Now, a couple of hints. Oh, I don't want to record myself.